I think we're missing a piece. I think if you don't have a relationship with the water, that if you're not able to be in the water, I mean, listen, we shower multiple times a day. We're in bathtubs. We drink it. Without it, I mean, next to air, water is one of the keys to existence. I mean, without water, there's no life. I think it's part of existence. I think it's part of making you feel alive. You go there, the intensity of this situation strips everything away. It just pulls everything, it pulls you away. The you that combs his hair and puts the clothes on and walks down the street, that's the you, that goes away. And the monks would say, the now, living in the moment, and all of these terms. In this moment, there's a stillness. That's the highest level of existence in my opinion, because none of this other stuff does that. And this stuff's free. I mean, this is free. It doesn't cost money. You don't buy it. It's not like if you have more of it, you can get more. Only your effort and your skill and your desire and your will are going to give you this. So this is earned stuff that you earn without reward, really, other than just the feeling.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Laird Hamilton, the American big wave surfer, stuntman, and the inventor of hydrofoil and toe-in surfing. You pioneered the big wave surfing movement, risking your life by taking on massive walls of water up to 100 feet high. In the year 2000, you earned your place in surfing history, catching a gigantic wave in Tahiti dubbed the heaviest ever ridden. You have revolutionized the sport, creating toe-in surfing to access waves previously too huge to surf, as well as developing the hydrofoil for riding above the water's surface. You are the creator of Extreme Performance Training, a holistic program involving underwater workouts, ice heat sessions, and breath work, and you have acted and performed stunts in Hollywood blockbuster movies like Waterworld, Die Another Day, and Point Break. Laird, welcome to London Real.
No, Brian, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. We were talking earlier, I grew up in San Diego, funny enough, and, where I went, Torrey Pines High School, which is where Tony Hawk, the skateboarder, graduated from, they had surf PE. And I remember when I first started in that school, it was just so strange that there were these kids that would meet on the beach and surf. And, a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, Laird, they never left San Diego because surfing, it was a part of them. It was like a part of who they were as human beings. And, I'm into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and when you hear like Hicks and Gracie and the Gracie families talk about it, it's like they use the water for it's a big part of their lives. And before we jump in, I was wondering, maybe you could explain to the average civilian, what surfing means to a surfer, because it's not just a sport, is it? It's almost like a way of life.
Well, first of all, I want to put one thing in before I start, which is just to make you a little jealous. So Hoist comes to my house. Hoist Gracie comes and trains with us on the weekends. So I get to enjoy his passion. But, the ocean for a surfer, I describe it as my greatest teacher, but it's and I don't like to get too too kind of ethereal and spiritual about it, but there's a connection that we have. I tell someone, listen, just to be in the ocean and just to be there is that in itself is enough to draw you to come back day in and day out. But then to ride a wave and feel the sensation of riding a wave, I mean, that is it's kind of has it's like one of the reasons for being alive. Like if you looked at it and you said, well, one of the reasons for being alive is you're going to be a husband, a father, a friend, a man, and you're going to ride waves and you're going to be in the ocean. I mean, it's just, for me at least, and for those who are connected to the sea, which is where we all came from anyway. And I think there's some deep physiological things that happen to us as well. But, I mean, I think we could talk about this, forever.
Yeah, I got challenged to do a half Ironman a couple years ago, and I did it. We made like a movie about it, and I never was a big swimmer, and it was the hardest part for me. But once I started swimming, I stuck with it, and now I swim once a week. I got into the butterfly, and there's something about being in the water that I can't explain. And I guess maybe it comes from our aquatic roots back in the day, but it's a weird way of moving my spine, and then all these things seem to kind of come together, for me in the water. So there's something there, I think.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at, just think about the fact that there's no gravity, that you just don't, it's one of the places, one of the very few places that you can actually be, that there's no gravity. So you have that kind of tension that we live under every day, all day long is gone for moments. And like I said, the compression of water allows the blood to flow through the lymphatic system that cleanses it in 1 hour, which normally takes like a 24-hour period, something like, there's some science like that. The truth is that that environment is connected to us in a way, and swimming itself it's almost like, I'd like to say like ballet or dance. I mean, if you look at the fluidity of a beautiful swimmer, you watch an animal that swims well, it's just so poetic. And so there's something magical about water. I mean, I have a giant swimming pool in my backyard that I spend hours in when I'm not in the ocean, or when I'm not, accessing an ocean that has that kind of beauty that draws you in with the creatures and there's a lot going on in the sea.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of that training you do in your backyard and what you do in the pool a little bit later. What's the longest you've gone without surfing, and how does it make you feel when you're not there? And what do you say to all the people who don't have access to the ocean? What do they do? Are they going crazy, do you think?
Well, I think we're missing a piece. I think if you don't have a relationship with the water, that if you're not able to be in the water. I mean, listen, we shower multiple times a day. We're in bathtubs. I mean, we drink it. Without it, I mean, next to air, water is one of the keys to existence. I mean, without water, there's no life. And so that's how deep our connection. So if you don't have some sort of relationship with it, I mean, one of our greatest innate fears is fear of drowning. And it's because, again, the relationship that we have with water goes so deep into our primal being that you're missing out. You're missing out one of the on one of the magic things. Like flying. Like if you never flew in a plane and never experienced a sensation of flying, you kind of need to experience a sensation of being in the water, on the water, and around the water. And a world without water for me would be. It would actually be a world without life. I mean, when we look around for places with life, we're looking for water. But I mean, I'm fortunate to have developed a relationship, and I grew up at the sea. So it's one of those things that you take for granted. But, I've had times when I've been away. I never go too long without being in the water. And I've gotten better at it because I've started to understand my need for it. So I'm able to subsidize it. I'm able to kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to, or it's just not inviting me. So I have other ways of getting in the water and being around water. And so it doesn't, but when I was younger, I mean, within a day or two, I would always say the gills dry out. My longest periods of time without being in the water were really around injury. So I was really like, you get a severe injury and then you can't go in the ocean. I'd cut my casts off and I'd do anything I could to get back in the water. Sometimes that would, kind of, slow down the healing, and you learn your lessons. You learn your lessons about that stuff. And, I think for me, when I do go through a long period of time when I'm not able to be in the water, that almost fuels my passion and my love. It's a little bit like fasting or something where you just really savor it and appreciate it. It seems we, the humans, when we take things for granted, you have it every day and it's always there, you just kind of don't appreciate it like you should. And I'll sometimes self-induce that. Like, I put myself in California in the summertime, and the ocean isn't quite as inviting as obviously the middle of the Pacific in Hawaii, where it's one of the most treacherous, but one of the most inviting oceans in the world. So it's almost like I hold myself back, and then I'm able to come into it, with full passion and vigor that, like you would in off season, like in your sport. You don't play a sport all year round and then think, well, I'm going to have the World Cup right now. They prolong that stuff every 4 years just so there's an anticipation and a build up. And I've started to learn how to kind of self-impose that stuff.
We have a park here in London called Hampstead Heath, and there's a pond there that's called the Men's Pond. And actually, I go there every Saturday of the year. And luckily I've had Wim Hof on here a couple times. It was the first time 5 or 6 years ago. So I'll jump in this thing at like 4 degrees centigrade. And it's my ritual every week. And sometimes I don't want to go in, but I know when I go in, I feel so much better. I do some breathing. And so it's funny you say that, because I search out the water too. Even in the middle of a massive city like London, people are always checking my Instagram like, where is that? Because it doesn't look like London, but it's actually right near in the middle of the city, really.
Yeah, you seek it out. Why are you drawn to it? I mean, these are internal draws that we're pulled to these things, like for some fear and for some danger, and I mean, I think some of it's hard to difficult to somebody goes, well, how come you're drawn to riding a giant wave or something? And I'm like, some of it just doesn't have, there's no conscious understanding. It's more of a draw, and you're pulled towards it for, and people, adrenaline junkie. And I always kind of despise that description, because it's kind of like, it invalidates the pureness of what you are and what you're interested in. It's like, oh, you're just doing that because you get this feeling. I'm like, that feeling is a byproduct, but you're drawn by something greater than just some sort of chemical reaction when you impose danger. It's a little more intricate than that.
What is it, do you think, a challenge for you, a teacher for you, like something you feel as like a man, as a human, you're drawn out to what you've described it sometimes, the rumbling and the low frequency sounds of that? Is it just pull you out there, and maybe there's not a logical answer to it all the time?
Well, and I think it's part of existence. I think it's part of making you feel alive. Like you go there, and when you're in these intense things, and the Wim would say, the nobleness and the wisdom of the cold. Where you go there, and the intensity of this situation strips everything away. It just pulls everything. It pulls you away. The you that combs his hair and puts the clothes on and walks down the street. That's the you that goes away. And, the monks would say, the now, living in the moment, and all of these terms doesn't get more in the moment than when you're in that pond, in that temperature, and everything is, and then it goes to breath. And in Hawaiian, the breath is the ha, or that's the life force. You breathe in, and then the spirit possesses. And when you die, the breath leaves and the spirit leaves. And I mean, you can go deep as you want, but I can tell you it's the now, it's the immediacy of existence. It's like, and there's no other clutter. There's no other, I mean, life, your brain is constantly running things and life is bombarding you, and you never really get a break. And in this moment, you get there's a stillness. There's a stillness and a break that you obviously need and probably need it on a regular basis. Actually, you seek it out. Like, where can I find, and maybe someone has to have 10,000 hours of experience at a skill to make it unconscious, so they can be in a flow state. Again, the now, the moment, that thing. So there's all different levels of it, but we know that these intense situations, and then you couple them with skill and knowledge, and then all of a sudden, that's the highest level of existence in my opinion, because none of this other stuff does that. And this stuff's free. I mean, this is free. Doesn't cost money. You don't buy it. It's not like if you have more of it, you can get more. You don't, this is, only your effort and your skill, and your desire and your will are going to give you this. This is going to be, so this is earned stuff, that you earn without reward, really, other than just the feeling, feeling. No, there's no, I mean, and I think, and that's where it starts, and people make lives of it. I mean, people make a living, people you're able to take pieces of it and turn it into a living. And if my friend would always say, shame on you. Like, if you're good and you're lucky, shame on you.
When you were just describing that there, it sounded like a conversation I had with Alex Honnold, who, climbed El Capitan and had the movie Free Solo, and Jimmy Chin, the director, was here. And there was a guy, I don't know if you know this guy, called the French Spider-Man. He was the guy that used to climb the Sears Tower back in the day. So he was here, and he said the same thing. He said, when I'm on that building, he said, there's nothing else I'm thinking about. I'm just there. It's this pure moment. And yes, I could die, but it's this place I love to be. But he can only be there because he has the 10,000 hours to be able to survive there. So yeah, you got to earn it. You have to also take some risk. But for him, he says he thinks it's crazy what everybody else does on the normal earth. He thinks what he does is actually the least crazy thing.
I could agree with that. I could agree that that's the most sane, that from the outside looking, you would think, well, that's insane, but you're not looking at it from the evolution of it. You're not looking at it from the process of what you developed and what you're able to understand to get to that position. And in a way, you're in maybe the most control that you could possibly be on a planet getting hurled through outer space at 27,000 miles an hour or whatever it is. So I can understand exactly that perspective of and let's get something very clear. Living is a dangerous game. I mean, just being alive. So it's great to go, oh, well, that's dangerous, that's life risking. And I'm like, living is life risking. I mean, you could get hit by a bus on a corner, and it happens all the time. And so it's not, and by the way, you weren't even doing anything exciting. You were just standing there. So at least if you're gonna go, because we're all going, at least if you do go, maybe have a chance to go at something that you kind of earn the opportunity to be in that situation. And we don't get to choose the time and the place, but we do get to participate in it until then. And so until then, we get to participate. How do you want to participate? What do you want to experience? What do you want to feel? What do you want to feel while you're here? Because not a lot of great feelings if you're not moving, if you're not exposing. It's all the good stuff happens from exposure, right? Being vulnerable, like love. This is love. What's love? Like exposing your heart to someone. Well, what's climbing on the outside of a giant building? That's exposure. You're exposed. You're Alex on the, you're hanging on the edge. I mean, this is exposure. When you're out and exposed, that's where all the good stuff happens. I mean, but then, there's always a consequence for exposure, and the highest level of pain or vulnerability is life, right? I mean, or we don't even know though. So that's the whole thing. It's really the unknown. We don't even know. So, but we have made in our mind that death is the apex of vulnerability, right? Above everything. And so it's interesting to hear and know people that do similar things in different fields, that there's similar attributes. I always say that life is a formulaic process. There's a certain formula to life. There's a formula to learning. There's a formula to failure. There's a formula to success. There's a formula, and it's just a matter of implementing it. What is the backdrop? Is it a mountain? Is it a wave? Is it the sky? Is it the river? Is it the ocean? Is it business? Is it love? Is it whatever? What is it? But the formula itself, when you really dissect everything, is pretty simple. Like we are. We're not that much different than one another at all, really. I mean, if I strip everything away and we just have fascia and it's just a body with two eyes, a nose. I mean, when everything's somewhat normal, you got 2 hands, 2 feet. I mean, we're not that much different. And either are the formulas. We have complex systems around it, but the formulas that govern us, like gravity, like if I drop somebody off a roof with nothing, they're all falling, and they're falling about the same speed, So, but yeah, it's an interesting thing, the commonality that we all the humans have, and then within that, the different groups of, there's people that are really scared and the people that aren't, the people that are really paranoid, the people that aren't. I mean, these are big separations. These are really defining things that separate us.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, that allowing yourself to be exposed is where all the great stuff happens, and that's where the pain happens. For a lot of my life, I kept myself out of that. Like I didn't even want to have like children in a family because I thought, oh man, I'm really exposed. Now that I've had them, I see the joy, but then I also know if you ever want to crush me, that's the way to do it. But now I know that's the game of life. So if you want the upside, you got to be prepared for the downside. And there is a bit of a formula to it once you figure it out, and I guess that applies to lots of things in life, right?
There's no end.
I want to talk about your journey, on surfing, big wave surfing, and a lot of the kind of the technology that you went down. And I want to tell you something that I thought was really insightful, and that was when your wife, Gabby Reese, was on Joe Rogan, and he asked her about you, and he said, well, what's Laird like? Is he always off doing this other stuff? And she said, yeah, he's off with his girlfriend. That's what she said. And that's one thing I remember from that episode. And I was like, this is a woman that gets it. She's like, that's what he's doing. He's with this girlfriend. He does these things that he's kind of crazy about. And then he comes home to me at night and he's with the family. Do you remember her saying that? And do you know what she meant by that?
Oh, yeah. Well, because I'm constantly reminded that this is the only other woman she'll share me with is the sea, And I think what makes Gabby not only an amazing, besides the most amazing woman that I've ever met, is her understanding of some of my needs, probably better than I understand them. And that these desires aren't against her. They're not against her. This isn't against, it's not, I'm going to the ocean and that's taking away from her. It actually is adding to her and bringing to her me and all my essence. And, I get a commonly asked question that I experience throughout my career has been, well, now that you have kids, you must not want to do the dangerous things and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but first of all, they didn't ask me to come in. I brought them into the world. And so why would I put on them, well, I used to do things until you came, and then I stopped doing the things that brought me all this joy and happiness and all these things. I stopped doing that now because I have you, unless I really just want to stop. Now, if I really just want to stop, then I should just say, you know what, I did that and I'm good with it. I don't need to do that anymore. But I think it's important that they also see me like Gabby understands what it does, what it means to me and what it does for me and what it is. I want them to see the effect it has on me, that having, I told somebody, I go, if I could just raise a content human, that as a father, as a parent, that at the end, I raised a content human, not a champion of this and a this, that, and no, I'm not talking about monetary success. I'm not talking about social success. I'm just saying a content human, because I don't see many the first step in that would be to have them find the thing that brings them something, brings them that feeling, right? That special feeling, which the ocean has done for me. I mean, I'm transitioning into really understanding the true special feeling that existence is supposed to bring, which is service. That at the end of the day, and I think as being a parent, it gets into service. We're talking about service, and that ultimately, through some of these other things I'm starting to do, I'm realizing that that's probably the apex of happiness. That true happiness is connected directly to service, of you being of service to the community. First, you being of service to you, because you have to start there. Then you're being of service to your family, then your friends, then the community, being of service. But I want them to see that. I want them to see what, and the ocean has been something that I've been of service to, and it's been of service to me. I have a relationship with it that has built the foundation. I want them to see that. I want them to see when I come back from riding a giant wave, what that does to Dad. What does Dad look like when Dad does this thing that brings him this feeling? Because maybe they'll be able to identify that and go, I can try to find that in my life. Maybe I can find that in art, or maybe I can find that in cooking, or maybe I can find that in work, or maybe I can find that in a relationship. Find it somewhere. Just please find it, And so, I describe parenting because it's easy to get off track, but parenting is one of the apex of evolution, I would believe. And I think no one tells you how hard it truly is, because you'd probably not do it. Like you said, hey, I don't know if I want to be that vulnerable, have kids. But I describe parenting as building a samurai sword, where you take steel, you heat it up, you beat it with a hammer, and you put it in ice. And that's what my children do to me. They take me, they heat me up, they beat me with a hammer, and they put me in ice. And they do that over and over. And then I'm a tempered soul, Then I'm like the hardest steel in the world, or I break. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably what it's like. You mentioned the service thing. It took me to my early to mid 40s to start to realize that was the key. And because most of my life I grew up, and I think a lot of the world grows up in this, it's all about me. I used to get my hair cut at a place down the road, and they used to play MTV with the sound off, and I'd have to look at it while he was cutting my hair, and I was like, do you watch this all day long? Because all I see are, gold chains and cars and girls. And I was like, this is kind of what we tell everybody is the answer. It's all about our personal gain. And so it takes a long time to get that service message, doesn't it?
Well, the ad man's working hard to tell you, just buy that and buy that and buy that, and you're going to be all good. But you have to go through that process, I believe, if you're fortunate enough to go through that process, and you see it time and time again. Success doesn't breed happiness. I mean, you see plenty of people that are highly successful. In fact, if anything, it probably has the opposite effect, because you were expecting it to do something different than it does. And I can experience, I experienced it myself. I thought, all I need to do is just ride the biggest waves and be the best at doing it, and that's going to take care of everything. And then you get there and you're like, oh, that didn't take care of everything. Now what do we do? Now what's our next move? So I think that in that process of where you have to be able to be fortunate enough to go through that, and then you realize, and you see it happening a lot with people, if you're struggling and you're trying to survive, and you're just trying to make enough to eat and give yourself some clothing and housing. I mean, that's for a lot of people, that's, and you're of service in your community. I mean, that's why you have so many people that are almost impoverished, that are very happy, because they're content, because
right.
they're going through the effort to just take care of the necessities. I always say complaining is a luxury. I mean, it's like you want to start complaining. Well, you have the time to complain, because if you were just trying to eat, and you were just trying to, house yourself, you're not complaining. You're like, hey, I got to figure out how to get some food and feed my family and, keep the roof over the house. And but it is about service. At the end of the day, there's nothing more internally satisfying than helping people. It's what we are, what's what we are we're a communal creature, and we need to help people. And when we do, it brings us a feeling that nothing else does. And it's to the point where you don't even need any public declaration of it. You don't need a public declaration like, wow, look at you. You're such a good helper. You help these people. You can do it. And parents get it. Listen, we get it. That's where you start your training, is in parenting. You get it from, hey, you get to clean the house, you get the thing, make sure make sure the place is good, protect the kids, make the thing, get the food, you're doing stuff for them in the dark. And moms are, believe me, moms can be content being at a house. They don't need to run a Fortune 500 company and show you how smart they are. They look at us, some of our behavior is like, we are crazy. We're crazy. Like, look at them, how crazy they are, and I'm not saying that there's not, women that are highly intelligent and more than capable of running any of these businesses. I mean, some of the best leaders in the world are women leaders, and we need more of that. It's just that they also are highly aware of how important it is to protect and take care, and for the feeling of accomplishment. And it's like, I wish I maybe had gotten that sooner, like understanding service. And I'm able to be, I'm developing my life to try to be more of service, but it's what it's all about. And there's nothing higher than, first of all, a mother, because without a mom, there's nobody, there's nothing, we don't exist.
Yeah. They go through that physical transformation too. And, we had some guests in the past talk about the psychedelic experience, which is ego destroying. And sometimes you're not in control of your body. And, I think it was Terrence McKenna said, well, a woman goes through that in childbirth, and that a man never experiences that, where all of a sudden your whole body is being transformed for the service of someone else and the birth of someone else. And so I guess I think when women get all these inherent lessons, and like you said, the service that a lot of us men just unfortunately don't get, and we have to go on our own journeys.
Yeah, well, and we hope we arrive. We hope we're smart enough to arrive.
I think one of your fellow Hawaiians, Shep Gordon, he's like a kind of a famous agent for like Mike Myers and stuff like that. And that was his thing. He always said at the end of the conversation, he said, service to others, Brian. He said, that's the key, service. He's one of the first guys that said that to me. Talk to me about your journey with surfing, because early on, I think you decided you didn't want to go the competitive route. And I think you had seen your dad kind of go down that way. And it just meant that, there was just a different standard, a different lifestyle, a different way of judging, whereas you kind of wanted to do it for the pursuit. Am I getting that right? And how would you explain that to someone who doesn't know the ins and outs of that culture?
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time when the competitive aspect of surfing was kind of only one part of it. It hadn't proliferated into the whole entire sport and really been the focus of it. And so there were people in surfing that were some of the best surfers in the world, but they weren't competitive surfers. They weren't surfing in contests. So, one guy would be the champion of the contest, but then there was maybe a guy that was this even better surfer that wasn't surfing competitively. He was just free surfing. And surfing kind of has a unique thing where we have an ability to kind of be artistic too. It's a sport, but you can still do like music or cooking. I mean, first of all, how do you judge music? How do you judge a chef? I mean, you have to sit there and be like, well, I like this food, I like that food, but there's, it's kind of confusing. And a little bit like gymnastics, there's some confusion in how do you determine the winner. I watched my dad go through kind of some trials and tribulation of, he was an incredible free surfer, artistically one of the top surfers of his day, subject his performance into competitive kind of format and suffer kind of some, suffer from that, and be confused by, maybe you surfed the best you've ever surfed and everybody says, yeah, that was great, you won. And then the other guy wins by 0.5 because he, needs to be the world champ and who knows what. I mean, it's the sponsors, the thing. I mean, there's so many factors. And I think I had such a competitive nature anyway, that my nature to be competitive was such that it brought out the worst in me. It made me like I would have been better in rugby, or some other contact sport or something like that. Even though I was more individual, I did, maybe jujitsu or some other martial arts stuff, or, again, but bringing out a naturally aggressive and a naturally aggressive and naturally competitive thing to the point where it's obnoxious. And so surfing offered me kind of a free form stage, a stage where I could just do it how I wanted, when I wanted, the way I wanted, which I think suited me. And I liked the defining aspect of the danger, because that really separated a lot of people. And then all of a sudden you're in a smaller group. And then if you're, and I looked at that as the apex. I looked at big wave riding as the apex. And so I subjected myself, when we were kids, we would surf in these little contests, and it was great, and you'd win a t-shirt, and then all of a sudden money started coming into it, and some, other factors that made it not as like fun, like when you were a kid. And then that's when I separated from it. And I I vowed to try to, because it sounds kind of egotistical, but, as a little kid, I vowed to, my whole thing was I want to be the best. Like, I want to be the greatest surfer that's ever lived, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the story tale that you tell yourself when you're a little dreamer. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that would be, but that was my thing. And as I went, I just thought that, well, if you surfed, if you surf the biggest, the best, then you're the best in my the way I framed my world. And at the end of the whole process, what I really found is that I really love surfing, that I just love to surf, and I don't need anybody to see me. It's okay if I go with a friend of mine and we have the greatest surf that we, and it's nice to maybe have a picture and a video after, because you can be like, yeah, well, because it disappears. It's one of these things that disappears, like a bubble or a star or something. It disappears and it'll never be there again. But yeah, that kind of direction was, and then how are you going to get sponsored if you're not on the tour? And there was a lot of things around it that would have, led me away from my direction, but I stayed true to it, even though I branched into other areas. I would say my greatest, I would say my overarching goal from the beginning was to never lose my love for surfing. And I thought if I surfed in contests and I was a competitive surfer, that I would begin to lose it, because I watched surfers growing up, people I looked up to, go through that process, and eventually they stopped loving it. And I thought if I did that, I would define that as sin. I thought that would be sinful if I stopped loving surfing. And so my goal was to do it any way I could to make it so I wouldn't stop loving it. And that means I would change the way I did it, how I did it. That's where innovation came in. That's where a lot of stuff happened, because I had the freedom to go in any direction. I wasn't just like, hey, I'm making country music and that's it. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to play some punk rock, and I'm going to go over here and play some Mozart, and I'm going to combine and make it punk Mozart with some country, and I'm going to create some new weird thing. And so I had that freedom to kind of do that, to be more exploratory and not be constrained by social pressure, or, through, in that industry, or, through the, okay, I got to surf like this, and the judges like that, and how are we going to perform, and and I felt there's a homogenization about that aspect of when you're confined, and then you're trying to please people, or you're trying to please a format. You kind of it stops your freedom, where I find that's where a lot of the greatest things happen, is in that, and it'll be in failure. Of course, when you're trying to do something different, there's a lot of failure in that. And you're not, and the failure isn't, other than people's scrutiny, and the negative things pointed at you, the failure is not, that doesn't determine whether you won or lost. So it can be like, oh, that looks stupid, or why would you do that? Or I thought you knew how to do that. As long as you can deal with that stuff, and water off a duck's back, and it's not like, well, you were going to be the world champ, but now you lost because you tried this new thing, and now you lost your sponsor and your thing. So that's not steering you. And so, I think there's multiple factors that influenced me to just kind of, I hope that answered your question, but just, took me off a different route, just opened my world to, just ultimately my imagination, just like how, just do it the way you want, when you want, how you want. And it's amazing where it could take you.
And what was that young Laird Hamilton like, 20-year-old? I heard you were, pretty aggressive as a kid, pretty competitive. Hawaii is known as a place where there's a lot of fights, right? BJ Penn, and I always hear it's a place where people scrap. How were you as a kid? And can you channel all that energy into a solo sport like surfing? Or like you said, do you need contact or something, or other people?
Well, first of all, Hawaiian culture is warrior culture. So that's warrior. It's a warrior culture. We grew up in a warrior culture.
Which means what? Which means this.
Well, it means that there's confrontation. It means that there's pecking orders, there's hierarchies, it's a warrior culture. But it's about respect. It's about respect. It's about honor. It's, all the things that make a warrior, right? So there's empathy. So we have empathy. We have character traits that warrior culture does, but there's certain things that we don't tolerate too. Like there's certain behaviors that, like, you can't stare at the guy like that. That's just not, you're coming into his aura, and you better be. That's going to, you don't look at a bear, because the bear will chase you if you aggress it. So, but. The thing about the ocean is that's true equality. The thing is everybody's equal before a wave, is what I always say. And the fact is, it's just your skill and your understanding and your abilities that can separate you from someone else. But the ocean doesn't discriminate. It doesn't go, oh yeah, okay, well, you're from a good family, or you're not, or you have money or you don't, or you're pretty or you're not, or it doesn't do any of that. It just treats everybody the same. And that's a beautiful thing. And I really enjoyed that. I'm like, okay, well, cool. Like if I do something stupid, I'm going to pay. And if I do something smart, then I'll be rewarded, kind of thing. It was like a real instantaneous, reward failure system. Like it's immediate. And I'll tell you what, you could take all the aggression in the world. You can take all the competitive spirit in the world, and the ocean will just absorb that like it will giant rock. It'll just be like, come on, bring it on. I love that. Give me all you got. And so it was an incredible environment for me to put all the energy that I had and take it. And if you, and in fact, if you don't submit, you'll be conquered. And it was really about submission. It was really about submitting and I was just maybe a hard case, like I was a hard case. It took a while for me to learn to submit, but over time you're forced to learn to submit to survive. And I'm like, wow, probably a pretty good life lesson. Learn to submit or die, or, and learn to submit, willingly submit, survive, And you start using that as a tool, pretty good teacher, amazing teacher, amazing environment, nothing like it that I know of. Gravity's one that, gravity's pretty honest that way. Gravity doesn't discriminate. Gravity doesn't, you can ask Alex, you can ask the Spider-Man. These are elements. These are, water, air, gravity. These are things that are pure. They're pure. They don't surprise you, only if you don't have knowledge. People be, oh, I couldn't believe that happened. Well, that's because you didn't understand it. If you truly understood the process, there would never be a surprise. You wouldn't be surprised, like, wow, why'd that bear run at me? Well, because you looked at it. Like, like why'd that wave do that to me, or why'd that current go that direction, or why did these things happen? Well, that's just part of how the system works. If you understand it, then that gives you that gives you a different perspective. All of a sudden, it's not as dangerous as you think it is. It's not as unhospitable as you think it is. It's why somebody can go do what they can do. Why can they go do what they can do? Because they understand it. They have a relationship with it to the point where they can go there and maybe even play there, like play in a place that Mark Spitz would get rescued, but he's the greatest swimmer in the world. But a kid that grew up in a current that knew how to deal with the surf.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.